Hey there everybody, welcome back to the Deep Fog. Last night, I got to see Zach Cregger's new film, Weapons, and let's just say it was not what I was expecting. While you're here, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on this video. The support on the last couple videos has been amazing, so thank you guys so much. Without further ado, let's go ahead and hop right into this. So, similar to my Together review, I'm going to be splitting this into a spoiler-free and then a bit of a more spoilery section towards the end, but as I did previously, I will give a warning before we start talking about spoilers. So, my non-spoilery thoughts. It was really good. I liked it a lot, but I will be honest, this film was really not what I was expecting, but if I also must be honest, I don't really know what I was expecting going into this. As I'm sure many of you know, this film follows a pretty simple concept. At 2:17 in the morning, an entire elementary class of kids just up and left their homes. They get up out of their beds, walk downstairs, walk out the front door, and are never to be seen again. Whenever I first heard about this movie and saw the first trailer, man, did it draw me in. I love the concept. I think this is like such a good horror concept, and I was just so stoked. This immediately became one of my most anticipated movies of the year. And I think that's why my opinions are a little mixed coming out of the theater, as I think I hyped this movie up too much in my head for what it could be, because the biggest thing that I struggled with is the possibility of how do they explain this mystery? How does this get explained? And I think the explanation in the movie is not horrible. However, I don't think it was exactly what I was anticipating, and I think that's why it might have been a little harder for me to get down with that idea, but that does not mean it was bad. I just think the direction they took it wasn't entirely for me, but I do still like the movie as a whole. The characters are really well done, and actually really like the storytelling method they use for this film. All the characters are genuinely very interesting and developed, and I actually thought it was really cool to see this be more of a character-driven film. I'll be honest with you guys, this film isn't as much of a horror as it markets itself to be. It actually had a lot of funny moments and a lot of character moments that were pretty well done. This film is a lot more about how the tragedy of the children affects the town and the people living in it than it is about the actual kids sometimes. And that is not a bad thing. This film does that really well. I think my favorite part about this movie is it really feels like you're getting a glimpse into a small town that's in peril and going through a really hard time, and it feels very authentic in that sense. I'll definitely say it was a lot of fun, and honestly this movie had a lot more laughs than I thought it would. It got some laughs out of me and the theater I was in actually, which was a lot of fun. Completely off topic and has nothing to do with the movie, but there was almost a fight in my theater, so that's fun. Yeah, two guys just started bickering and yelling because a dude turned on his phone flashlight and the other guy wanted to take it outside for some reason. It was insane. But overall, I definitely say that this movie is still worth a watch. I will be honest, I don't think that the way that they explain the mystery of this movie is going to appease everybody. In fact, I would not be surprised if it actually divides a lot of people, because it's one of those things that it either works for you or it doesn't. And for me, although it wasn't my cup of tea, I still think it worked in the sense of this movie, and they still did it in a way that was really fun and still never made it to where I kind of was like rolling my eyes or anything. I still really liked it. And although I do think a lot of people probably won't like some elements of the ending, I do think the ending overall, like the final, literally last scene, is great, and they did that like amazingly. That was just the best way to end the movie. So yeah, overall, really enjoyed it. It did some things that I wasn't the biggest fan of, but I think the things it did right really carry this movie. And overall, the concept is still very frightening, and the horror elements that it does have are really well done. So definitely worth a watch. Here's your warning, we're going to get into a bit of spoilers here, so if you don't want any spoilers, then don't carry on. So I think the biggest thing that I struggled with getting down with was the witch stuff. I don't know if I was the biggest fan of it, and I think that's just because that's my preference when it comes to horror, is I'm not always the biggest fan of that type of elements in horror, of like witchy, like, you know, making stuff, making spells, doing stuff like that. I don't know, I just wasn't the biggest fan of it, and I feel like the way her goals were kind of lost on me. It felt like she was kind of just doing this just to fuck around. From my understanding is that she was like sucking the essence from the people she was controlling, something along those lines, which I could see making sense, but I kind of wish the movie got more into that. And I wish they kind of made her scarier. I feel like they almost turned her into this like goofball, sort of like, look at this weird wacky woman, and I wish she was scarier. She didn't feel that actually threatening or frightening to me. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't think I could really fully get into that idea. Again, like I said, I don't know what I was expecting. I think I was expecting something a little more supernatural, but I do still think the way that they went about her and her character was still like enough for me to be like, okay, you know, I see where they're coming from. Hey, future me here, I'm leaving that in because I don't know how I fucked up saying that so bad, and I feel like it's only fair that I have to leave that in. That was horrendous. I see where they're coming from with this idea. I see why they went this direction. I also thought the idea of everyone being controlled, which most people kind of knew from the trailers, like they had to have been being controlled or something. I think that idea was really scary, and I think the scariest elements of the movie was the fact that this kid was left alone to just feed his emotionless parents and classmates. That was very fucking frightening to me. And I like that element. I like the element that the witch was using his parents against him and being like, yeah, I'll like make your parents kill themselves if you don't stay. I'm assuming the only reason she really kept the kid, I believe his name was Alex, alive was to kind of have him do her bidding. But I'm kind of surprised she didn't end up controlling him for some reason, but you know, it still made enough sense. Like I said, this movie did not hit for me on all parts. I think, sadly, I overhyped it a little too much in my head for what they could have done with it, but that does not mean this movie is bad. I still think you should go see it and judge for yourself what you think of the movie, but overall, it was a fun experience. It was really fun to just see so many people seeing an original horror movie in theaters like this again. It's been a great year for horror, and we still have many more movies for the rest of the year. So, yeah. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye!